Sugar plum fairies, dancing mice, and a giant Christmas tree. Sounds familiar, right? But the Nutcracker story is far stranger and darker than you think. Beneath the twinkling lights and joyful music lies a tale filled with magic, mischief, and moments that once terrified children. Long before Tchaikovsky's melodies brought it to life on stage, the Nutcracker was a twisted fairy tale, full of haunted dolls, battles with evil forces, and danger lurking just out of sight. The story teetered on the edge of madness, and in some versions even hinted at death. Definitely not the sugar-coated Christmas tale we know today. This is the incredible, twisted journey of how a haunted tale became a Christmas tradition full of music, mystery, and magic. The story begins in Berlin, winter of 1816, inside the mind of Ernst Theodor Amadeus Hoffmann, a man who walked the line between fantasy and madness. He had the mind of a lawyer and the heart of an artist. One of his creations was a tale called Nutcracker and the Mouse King. It wasn't sweet, it wasn't cheerful, and it certainly wasn't for children. Eerie, surreal, and soaked in the kind of dream logic only Hoffmann could imagine, it was a story where dolls came alive, battles raged, and danger lurked in the shadows. At its heart, a cursed boy, a brave girl, and a world where courage, cleverness, and love could turn the impossible into reality. Hoffmann wrote not to comfort, but to challenge readers, reminding them that imagination can be dangerous, wild, and exhilarating. And now, we step inside that strange, twisted world to meet the Nutcracker as Hoffmann first imagined him. It was Christmas Eve. Marie Stahlbaum and her brother Fritz could hardly contain their excitement. At last, the parlor door opened to reveal a sparkling tree, glittering with tiny toys and sweet treats, sitting atop a table piled high with gifts. Toy soldiers and a horse for Fritz, a new doll for Marie, and storybooks and dresses for their older sister Louisa. Then their godfather, the mysterious Drosselmeyer, stepped silently out from behind a screen, as if he had emerged from the shadows themselves. He seemed both kind and, otherworldly, as if he had stepped out from a different world entirely. He carried an intricate clockwork castle filled with tiny, moving figures. The children marveled at it, but only briefly. As their attention drifted back to toy soldiers and dolls, under the tree, Marie spied a curious little figure, a Nutcracker. Though his head seemed far too large for his body, and his miner's cap looked almost comically out of place, Marie was fascinated. Something about him seemed odd, almost as if he were waiting for something. Delighted, Marie fed him small nuts, with Louise joining in the fun. Fritz, wanting a turn, shoved a large nut into the Nutcracker's mouth and cracked 3 teeth, misaligning his jaw. Marie carefully bandaged him with a ribbon from her dress, unaware that this small accident was just the beginning of an adventure far stranger than any she had ever known. That evening, as bedtime approached, the children carefully placed their toys in a large cabinet in the parlor. Its glass front gleamed in the dim candlelight, displaying each treasure perfectly. Drosselmeyer's delicate clockwork castle on the highest shelf, picture books below, Fritz's rows of toy soldiers on the next, and at the very bottom, Marie's dolls, nestled among tiny chairs, sofas, and beds. The cabinet seemed almost alive itself, a silent guardian of the children's world. Marie pleaded for a few more minutes of play. Her mother, ever patient with a well-behaved child, allowed it. Then the candles were doused, leaving only the faint overhead glow. The room seemed to hold its breath. The clock struck 12. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the parlor, and the air seemed charged with strange energy. From the corners of the room emerged an army of mice. The dreadful Mouse King appeared, 7 heads twisting and hissing, each adorned with a crown. Startled, Marie stumbled backward and crashed into the glass-fronted cabinet. Shards splintered across the floor, cutting deep into her arm as the Nutcracker and toy soldiers tumbled free from their enclosure. Chaos erupted. Toy soldiers clashed with mice. The Mouse King pressed his attack relentlessly, and the Nutcracker struggled to rally his soldiers. Marie, seeing him in peril, acted without thinking. She yanked off her slipper and hurled it with all her strength, striking the Mouse Kings and knocking him unconscious. But the effort cost her dearly. Her vision blurred, her arm throbbed with pain, and she collapsed among the scattered toys, a pool of her own blood forming beneath her. The next morning, when Marie finally awoke, her world felt unsteady, her mind fogged with pain and confusion. She tried to tell her parents about the battle she had witnessed, the 7-headed Mouse King, the Nutcracker, the brave toy soldiers, but they only frowned and whispered of fevered dreams. To them, she seemed delirious, perhaps even a little mad, her words dismissed as the wild imaginings of an injured child. Yet Marie knew the truth, and the shadow of that night clung to her, lingering in her memory. For a week, Marie remained in bed. In her mind, the battlefield replayed endlessly. Her parents fretted over her recovery, attending to her wounds and offering gentle reassurances, yet they could not understand the reality Marie insisted upon. To them, her vivid recollections of the battle were fevered imaginings, perhaps the ramblings of a frightened, injured child. But Marie knew the truth, and a quiet dread lingered at the edges of her awareness. The world she had glimpsed was real, and it had not yet finished with her. One evening, as the room grew dim with the fading light, a familiar, unsettling presence appeared in the doorway. Drosselmeyer, the mysterious godfather, stepped silently into the room. His eyes glimmered with a strange light as he promised her a tale of magical transformation, cruel curses and revenge. "Long before you were born," he began, "a terrible curse was cast upon a princess. Princess Pirlipat entered the world surrounded by celebration. She was a newborn with an almost supernatural beauty, rosy-cheeked, bright-eyed, and beloved by all who saw her, all but one. In the dark corners of the palace lurked Frau Mauserink, the Mouse Queen. She had sworn revenge against the king, Pirlipat's father, for he had slaughtered her entire family. The Mouse Queen and her brood had devoured every scrap of bacon meant for the king's grand feast, and in a rage, the king had summoned the kingdom's greatest inventor, Christian Elias Drosselmeyer. The king commanded that Drosselmeyer build a mousetrap no mouse could escape. Drosselmeyer obeyed. He crafted dozens of ingenious traps, baited each one with bacon, and set them throughout the palace. Only the Mouse Queen herself was clever enough to avoid them. Her children, her family, her entire clan, all were wiped out in a single night of snapping metal jaws, and Frau Mauserink never forgot. One winter evening, she crept into the royal nursery. With a hiss of ancient magic and vengeance that shook the cradle, she placed a curse upon the infant princess. Pirlipat's perfect face twisted grotesquely, her jaw jutting forward like a nutcracker's maw, her limbs shriveling as her eyes bulged unnaturally. The queen screamed, the king raged, and once again they turned to Drosselmeyer's, this time demanding a miracle. He must find a way to restore Pirlipat's beauty. After long months of desperate study, Drosselmeyer discovered a prophecy. The curse could be undone, but only by a young man, pure of heart, who could crack the world's hardest nut, the fabled Krakatuk nut. He would have to crack it with his teeth, feed the kernel to Pirlipat, and then take 7 steps backward without faltering. For more than 15 years, Drosselmeyer searched the world for both the Krakatuk nut and the young man who could crack it. In the end, He found both the nut and the boy in the home of his brother. In the royal court, the boy cracked the Krekatuk nut cleanly, and Princess Pirlipat's beauty was instantly restored. But destiny was not finished with them. As he stepped backward, counting each step aloud, the Mouse Queen, small now, but burning with hate, scurried underfoot. His heel landing on the Mouse Queen, the boy stumbled. As she lay dying, Frau Mauserinck spat her final curse. The young man's handsome face warped, his features stiffening, twisting into the wooden, doll-like visage of a nutcracker. Princess Pirlipat, now as vain as she was beautiful, recoiled in disgust. The court mocked him. Cast out and cursed, the boy disappeared from the palace, forgotten by all but Drosselmeyer. And that child, Drosselmeyer whispers, leaning so close Marie can feel his breath, is the Nutcracker who now lives in your cabinet downstairs. He will remain trapped in that grotesque form until he can defeat Frau Mauserinck's son, the Mouse King with 7 heads. But even victory in battle won't be enough. The curse will break only if someone can love him truly, despite the horror of his appearance. Long after Drosselmeyer had left, Marie lay silent in her bed. The room felt colder somehow, as if the shadows themselves were listening. The revelation settled over her like a weight. The Nutcracker was not just a toy. He was a cursed boy, hurt, hunted, and trapped. From that night on, Marie's thoughts were consumed by the tale. And soon, the tale began to bleed into her reality. Late one night, the Mouse King appeared in her bedroom doorway. 14 glowing eyes, 2 from each of his 7 heads, staring at her with hungry delight. His whiskers twitched. His tiny claws clicked on the floorboards. Every night he demanded something. Give me your sweets, or I will destroy your Nutcracker. Give me your toys, or I will chew him to pieces. Marie trembled but obeyed. She offered him her candies, her little treasures, her Christmas marzipan. She was terrified of what the Mouse King might do to the Nutcracker if she refused. But each offering only made his demands grow sharper, crueler. He wanted to break her spirit before he broke her Nutcracker. One evening, exhausted from fear, Marie picked up the Nutcracker to cradle him and froze. A tiny dark smear marked the corner of his wooden jaw. Blood, not hers, not old, fresh. Marie's heart pounded. Something had happened. Something real. The Mouse King had attacked the Nutcracker. As she wiped the blood away with trembling hands, a whisper, soft as breath, yet unmistakably present, seemed to brush past her ear. A sword. He needs a sword. Marie hurried to find Fritz. She persuaded him to part with the little tin sword from one of his old soldiers. She placed the sword beside the Nutcracker before bed. That night, the Mouse King did not come. Instead, as the moonlight slanted across her room, stepping forward from the shadows, was the Nutcracker, alive, moving, victorious. And draped over his arm were 7 glittering crowns, each torn from the severed heads of the Mouse King. The curse's first requirement had been fulfilled. With the Mouse King defeated and the household returning to calm, the Nutcracker wants to thank Marie for her bravery. He leads her to a tall wardrobe in the corner of the parlor. When he opens its doors, a staircase spirals downward into a warm glow. Marie follows, stepping into a world that feels stitched together from dream, childhood wonder, and the lingering sparkle of Christmas magic. At the foot of the stairs lies a glittering meadow where every blade of grass is a tiny gemstone. Raisin and almond gates swing open in their approach, revealing enchanted places: the Christmas forest, the lemonade river, gingerbread home, and Bonbonville. Beyond the Lake of Roses and the Jelly Grove rises Jamberg, the capital city, where the marzipan castle gleams under a sugar-dusted sky. For Marie, it is all wonder, too much wonder. As she wanders deeper into the castle grounds, the world grows lighter, softer, hazier. She begins to drift upward, as if the dream can't quite hold her. The Nutcracker reaches out, but the scene dissolves, and Marie wakes in her own bed with her mother hovering anxiously beside her. Days pass. One afternoon, as Marie quietly tells her Nutcracker that she would never abandon him, no matter how strange or broken he might be, she suddenly swoons and slips from her chair. As her mother lifts her, the parlor door opens and Drosselmeyer's young nephew steps inside. No longer a nutcrack, but the handsome young man he had been before Frau Mauserink's curse. Later, after dinner, Marie and the young Drosselmeyer are left alone in the parlor. He kneels and thanks her for freeing him from the curse that trapped him in that wooden body. He asks her to be his queen and rule beside him in the land of the dolls. Marie accepts. 1 year later, the two are married. They return to the land of the dolls, where Marie and her Nutcracker prince still rule over the kingdom. In 1845, nearly 30 years after Hoffmann first penned his strange and unsettling fairy tale, another literary giant stumbled across it, one who would change the Nutcracker's future forever. Alexandre Dumas, the superstar behind The Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo, discovered Hoffmann's tale and saw something inside it worth reshaping. Dumas translated Nutcracker and Mouse King into French. Going a step beyond just translating, Dumas softened the darkness, making the story whimsical rather than terrifying. Dumas emphasized wonder over terror, kindness over cruelty, and imagination over dread. His Marie is sweet, polite, and dreamy. Godfather Drosselmeyer also undergoes a transformation. In Dumas' version, he becomes the eccentric but lovable inventor, the delightful bringer of toys and magical stories. Yet Dumas didn't remove the heart of the story. He follows Hoffmann's plot quite closely while lightening the emotional tone. Dumas' version of the story feels magical in a straightforward, comforting way, just mischievous enough for children but never frightening. In his world, Marie isn't losing her grasp on reality. She's simply young enough to see the magic adults can no longer perceive. This sweeter, softened version of the Nutcracker, the one polished by Dumas, was the story that finally reached theaters, parlors, and the hands of young choreographers. But if you're thinking, wait, that's nothing like the ballet, you're absolutely right. When Russian theaters sought a Christmas ballet in the 1890s, the story was too dark, complex, and grotesque for the stage. The Imperial Theater wanted something lighter, something elegant, charming, and easy to translate into movement. Choreographer Marius Petipa built the ballet scene by scene, rearranging events for spectacle rather than narrative depth. The Christmas Eve party expanded into a grand social dance, perfect for involving the students of the Imperial Ballet School. Children march and skip in formal patterns. Adults glide through elegant ballroom dances. The story follows the choreography, not the other way around. Drosselmeyer brings mechanical dolls that dance on command, perfect for the stage. Clara becomes the quintessential sweet child of Victorian fantasy. Fritz becomes the mischievous brother who breaks the Nutcracker out of jealousy. When the party ends, the guests depart, the Silverhouse family disappears upstairs, and the real magic begins. Late at night, Clara sneaks back to check on her new Nutcracker sleeping under the tree. The clock strikes 12, the Christmas tree grows. The toys come to life. Toy soldiers battled mice. The Mouse King, now with a single head, fell to Clara's slipper, and the Nutcracker somehow became a real boy. Act 2 became the Land of Sweets, a dazzling series of dances representing holiday treats and faraway lands. Hoffman's dark, uncanny edges vanished, but in their place a new magic was born, one that families returned to every holiday season. Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky was commissioned to write the music, though initially reluctantly. The Nutcracker felt childish to him, too small for his grand compositions. Petipa's detailed instructions constrained him, and the loss of his beloved sister Sasha in 1891 cast a shadow over his work. Months before the ballet premiered in March 1892, Tchaikovsky selected 8 enchanting numbers to form the Nutcracker suite. It was an instant triumph, vivid, colorful, and memorable. The suite gave the music a life of its own, embedding melodies like the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy and Waltz of the Flowers into the public imagination long before audiences embraced the ballet itself. On December 18, 1892, the Nutcracker finally reached the Mariinsky Theater. It should have been a spectacular success. Act 1 dragged. Critics dismissed the plot as childish. Performances were uneven. The ballet flopped. Tchaikovsky, reading the reviews, wrote privately, "My day will come." But he never saw it. The composer died months later, leaving the Nutcracker frozen in obscurity. Yet the Nutcracker suite endured, carrying the music forward, preparing the world for what would come next. For decades, the Nutcracker lingered in the shadows. Tchaikovsky's music traveled through concert halls, enchanting audiences even as the ballet itself struggled. In 1940, Disney brought the Nutcracker suite to life in the animated film Fantasia. Fairies danced on frost-tipped flowers. Fish swirled through sparkling streams. Audiences were mesmerized, proof that Tchaikovsky's magic could leap off the page, even without dancers. Across the U.S., ballet companies noticed how the music still had the power to attract an audience. The San Francisco Ballet's 1944 production of the ballet planted the seeds of a beloved holiday tradition. But the ultimate resurrection came in 1954 when George Balanchine premiered his version with the New York City Ballet. Using Tchaikovsky's music as the heartbeat, Balanchine's choreography created a world alive with charm and magic. Children adored Clara. Adults marveled at the artistry, and audiences of all ages were swept into the story. From Hoffman's dark tale to Dumas' whimsical revision, through Tchaikovsky's grief and genius, and even the disastrous premiere, the Nutcracker survived. It grew. It became a tradition. What began in shadow became a story that shines forever, enchanting generations with imagination, music, and the wonder of the season.